This is part 3 of the JoJolion arc tier list. If you missed parts 1 or 2, you can find them in the top right corner or the description of this video. I hope you enjoy.
Okay, so
Let's tackle
Wonder
it.
Review. If you told me you place it at S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, E tier, or F tier, I would be inclined to agree with you. This is such a divisive part for good, a divisive arc for good reasons,
Because
and it depends entirely on what you care about in JoJo.
Yeah, it's so long that it just has that wide spectrum of it could end up literally anywhere. Copy. All right, that. All right, this is what we're doing. Okay.
Hey, it's just like the sky filled with Wonder Reviews.
The sky is filled with Wonder Review. Every tier is filled with Wonder Review.
Okay, so when I said before that we hadn't gotten to my favorite chapter yet, this is the arc I was talking about. My favorite chapter is chapter 92 of JoJolion, which is the chapter
is
where...
so good. It's so good.
Yes, it's amazing. It's the chapter where Josuke and Holly are finally reunited. Josuke drinks the Rokakaka juice and gets the sort of eye rock thing.
Right. His resolve shows through entirely in that chapter, right?
It's amazing. Even if I don't think it's fully built upon in the end, realized, I think his determination is really palpable in that. Now, this arc as a whole, I think, shows not even the best and worst of what JoJolion has to offer, but what the best and worst of what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has to offer.
Absolutely. 100% I agree with that statement.
The absolute worst of shit just not making any sense if you think about it for more than a second. It has the absolute worst of logical character abilities and stuff like following a path of logic, ironically enough. But at the same time,
the worst of power scaling, even on a fundamental level.
Yes, it has the worst of just shit that just seems unjustifiable, like the rock insects. It just feels like a tangent, not really a part of the fight.
Right.
Which sucks. But at the same time, it has the concept of calamity, which is an amazing concept and really carries this entire arc. It has the design of Wonder Review, this robot old man in a
microphone
cap.
head.
Yeah, with all the Renee Magritte references. That's so interesting. And then it also has the whole movement of the characters trying to essentially find a way to overcome something that is essentially impossible to approach.
Right.
The idea of Gappy forcing Wonder Review to eventually come to him, that's really good. I don't like that it's not followed up upon and doesn't really involve the actual solution of the arc. But when that happens, you're okay, cool, we're making progress here. It has Yasuo suffering, but it has meaningful Yasuo suffering when she finally gets over it and essentially takes Joshu's arm.
Right.
It feels justified and you feel good for her.
So
she's finally making a stand against her ex-boyfriend.
Well, that part is good. And that part actually sort of introduced a dilemma that was sort of interesting, because up until that point you had two Rokakaka that needed to be harvested, and you had two people that needed them in the end. You had Tsurugi and you had Holly.
Yasuo taking it for herself.
Yasuo takes it for herself. Now that forces the characters to make a choice. Who are they going to save?
That would have been amazing if the last one didn't have all this weird bullshit going on with it. It really shouldn't have worked, but whatever, we need it to work.
If the last one didn't end up in Toru's hands, and the whole ending with how it happened,
or at least if there was a reason to explain that it was
the way it was something
ripe
more,
or something.
Yeah.
If we had a thing it's finally ripe or something like that, one little comment for that would have made a lot of sense.
If what was set up was delivered on, I would have no qualms putting it in A, but there are so many things. I mean, Toru specifically.
It feels simultaneously JoJolion collapsing in on itself, but also going off with a bunch of fireworks. It looks cool, but really we needed that.
I actually feel it more collapsed in on itself. The fireworks, see, here's the problem. It's interesting, right? You cannot diss it because it did try something new. It tried something very different. You completely took your protagonist away from the antagonist. Toru and Josuke don't see each other during this entire conflict. And you're setting up the two most important places in the entire part, the estate, the hospital. Things are happening at both that are relevant to both. I like the risk that it took. I don't think the risk paid off, personally. I think that it missed the mark. So, I mean,
I think that
this
it's
was a
very
funny meme.
interesting.
I'm going to delete these later. It was a funny meme. But yeah.
I think it's very interesting that Araki has tried something new with Wonder Review and didn't just do the same like direct confrontation between the antagonist and the protagonist again. I think it's very cool how he wanted to try a more proactive protagonist and more reactive antagonist, but I don't think he properly supported it in the way that he needed to, that it felt compelling.
And here's like the final nail in the coffin. I don't know if you realize this. There are 18 stands in part 8.
Okay.
How many are automatic?
Most of them.
9 of them. Half of them are automatic.
Half of them are automatic. Dear God.
It's unreal because I went back through the other parts. The most
actually,
automatic stands you get are like 3 per part. And just to have automatic the entire part and then slow burn on this guy, I'm thinking E personally. I'd go up to D.
It's weird because like every single place that I think of on here,
could fit. I know, but no, like overall,
it doesn't even fit. It feels like it shouldn't be there.
We have to make the tough choices.
It doesn't feel like it's bad enough to be put alongside chapter 83, I think.
No,
it doesn't feel bad enough to be put alongside Paper Moon Deception. It doesn't feel bad enough to be put alongside California King Bad.
I think its lows can be put aside.
Its lows bring it very far down, but I think it's not doing justice to what it does right to put it down that low.
I don't know.
But then again, like how much of that, is like part of the actual arc itself, and just the fact that it takes up so much of JoJolion's runtime.
That's an issue too. And of course, you know, we had our own preconceived opinions about it because we were reading monthly.
I don't even think that's too much of an issue because like I would have been fine with this arc doing the things it did if it executed on it a little bit better.
But it didn't.
Like if it
that's
felt
the thing.
like
it took the risk and
it doesn't feel like this is what should have happened because it leaves so much up in the air that doesn't make sense anymore because it happened. If the story was written to more properly present this in the very end, I would have loved it. This is like such a cool concept for an arc.
If it delivered on the things that were set up and realized like this arc has to be judged because it is, well, the penultimate arc, Radio Gaga is its own thing. It has to deliver on everything built up before, at least bar like the stuff that Vitamin C delivered on. It has to be a culmination of what JoJolion was. And I sort of think it is. It could be in any single one of these. I still say overall, I'm thinking it's lower on the tier list rather than higher.
I think it's flat in the middle, to be honest.
We could compromise flat in the middle.
Yeah, Wonder Review is like the culmination of all my problems with the end of JoJolion, but I still do think there's some merit to it. I don't think it's so bad that it needs to be an E tier. If you think about it, like Paper Moon Deception, it doesn't feel like it has any good points to it besides the introduction of certain concepts. Wonder Review definitely feels like it has good to it.
It
like
does.
There's things that I love about this
every
arc.
chapter. Okay, what puts it down towards E for me is I hate.
It feels like it destroys parts of JoJolion's
it does unapologetically.
Structure.
It does.
Unapologetically, it just like destroys like what kind of things that you love about JoJolion. It doesn't like fulfill what you want from it.
Even though I love Ojiro Returns, that was the beginning of the end with the characters. 3 chapters. They're introduced in one, do something awesome in the next, and die in the chapter after that. And that happens 3 freaking times. I can't get over it. I especially the characters.
I don't even want to get into all the issues with like how the thing is solved and like with Kado Higashikata.
Right. I'm leaning more towards D now because, like you said, the highs are high.
Right. It just feels weird putting it on the tier of California King Bed because they're so dissimilar in like quality.
Well, I think all of these arcs are sort of dissimilar except for maybe the free time arcs, like the Fruit Parlor and the Rai Mamazuka one. But if you had to average, if you have to average it, right? How many good chapters from Wonder Review are there?
It's 20 chapters.
20 chapters. Pick the. What are the good ones?
Right.
What are the good ones?
So
I'm gonna open up Manga Dex. I got it in another tab.
Okay. So the first 3 chapters of the Wonder Review arc are when they are pursuing the head doctor of the TG University Hospital, and that's when they're first pursuing Akefu out into the streets.
Right.
And it ends with Toru and Yasuho being like, "Hey, I'll defend Gappy in court." Toru. Then it goes on to
Okay, so maybe
the Ojiro
around that
returns
time,
arc.
I'd say it's okay. We're gonna play by play where the Wonder of You is per the chapters that we're going through, right?
Okay,
So around that
first
point,
three
I would say C
chapters,
tier.
solid B.
A solid B.
I'd
Okay.
say solid B for the first 3 chapters
Okay,
because
first
like
3 chapters, solid B.
I don't think it's anything better than like Dubiwar or whatever or Born This Way, but I think it's fairly competent on its own, and the interactions with Toru are fairly good in this beginning. Like it feels a bit based with the relationship between love triangle thing between the 3 characters, but I think otherwise it's presented really well and it's very consistent at this point. Then we go into the Ojiro Returns arc.
That's fine.
And then
you can
after
stay.
that, we get into the section where they're just like out in Morio and they're in the golden Lamborghini and Yasuho is talking with Toru.
Yeah.
I think that's also very interesting on Yasuho's side because this is the only time where we really get insight into Toru's character besides like chapter 99.
Right, but I would say that's probably a little less interesting than when he was. Because there's more intrigue in the first 3 chapters, but then it's still average at that point. It's not,
and it's also where the entire like ability and how it works starts coming
it's
apart.
sort of, well, yeah,
because they just think about pursuing him and they're just like
and
exploding
that's the thing.
essentially.
I can't get behind that ability. Calamity as an idea, great concept.
It
and
needed to be consistent
needed
because
to
if you
be-
want to overcome
Right.
the logic of this world, there needs to be logic in this world.
there needs to be logic to overcome. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, it's fine right there. Then you go chapter
And
90, 91, 92. I would say it goes up in quality.
92, it goes up, I would say, as far as S, because
Okay.
92 is my favorite chapter, but it has nothing to do with Akefu. Like, the
Right,
presentation in the TG University Hospital, that's entertaining, and, like, we kind of see him kind of be,
Yeah,
like,
you know,
kind of flamboyant and
all-star,
expressive,
yeah.
which we don't really get for much of the rest of the arc. The main, like, heart of that is the relationship between Holly and Josuke.
And that's what's
then,
important.
And then we move on, and everything goes to shit at the Higashikata estate.
So Yasuho gets flushed down the toilet, and I would say it flushes down to a solid D tier until chapter 95 is its own separate thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It just meanders right now. It took me almost a week to go through just this arc alone. It's, Tsurugi's turning into origami at this point. It's like, what the
And then he
hell
just
is
suddenly
going on?
stops for a
And then
bit
he
for some
stops for a
reason,
bit, and it's
which
like,
doesn't make sense, but whatever.
okay.
And then after that,
So
we get
chapter-
the return over to Rai Mamazuku in prison,
Right.
where the ability just completely collapses in on itself. It introduces the concept of karma being a part of like who gets the worst calamities out of the bunch.
Right, because
which,
if you were talking about calamities affecting everyone equally by some logic, karma
Right.
just it ends that. It doesn't make any sense.
here's the thing, I don't think that it's a bad idea to implement
No,
into
I
the
would say
ability itself.
it's probably.
I think that would make sense if it didn't feel like it didn't actually matter to the ability. The characters who do bad shit, a lot of the time, like Jobin, don't get worse calamities. They don't have plane panels like
Jobin
careening
died
into
by
their
what,
face.
like the tip of a pen or something?
Right, Jobin dies by it, but that doesn't feel like it's because he got hit by a strong calamity. It feels like he just didn't react to the ability in the way he needed to. That feels like a
Right.
minor thing, even though
Right.
it hits his heart directly. So it doesn't feel like that actually matters at all. And then, like, we have Rai going back to the TG University
Which I
Hospital.
like. I would
and we
say
have,
that goes up, you know,
yeah,
up a little
we have
bit.
Josuke waiting for Wonder of You to pursue him, which is
Right.
interesting.
You're
It's a
flipping it on
like,
its head.
turnabout.
Yeah.
It's it feels like we're actually making progress here,
Right,
but
so it
because
go up
that's
again.
never actually like contributing to the actual solution to the problem, it ends up just being like a separate ability
I
that
know. It's just like, no.
it's so frustrating, and it doesn't
And then rock insects.
it feels like
oh,
we've been
no.
doing
Here's a rock insect. What was the first one?
feels like
Do-do-do-do-de-da-da-da.
nothing we've been building up to. Yeah, do da da da. Then it's
Oobla-dee-oobla-da.
blah dia blah da.
Yeah. I would
Um,
say those rock insect chapters are just, I
It,
get
it feels
why.
like it's meandering.
Right. It is 100% meandering. It makes sense, especially with the rock insects from the hair clip arc or the chapters that.
And it
was
just makes
there.
you think why he wouldn't send both of them out at the same time if he had both of them.
Right.
Which just makes him look foolish at the end. And okay, like you have Dio like sending all of his minions out separately, and that's
Right.
like weird. But like you have them in your pockets, man.
Exactly. No, but I think chapter 100 was fantastic. The reintroduction of the spin. I very much enjoyed it, even though it is done in a way that seems more like an ass pull than before, you know, training your spin.
But then you have chapter 101, and it's just like, what the hell happened here? What the hell are you doing, Joshu?
I know, and then it goes down again. Okay.
It goes down again. It's so fluctuating.
And then
I feel like we kind of have to just put it in the middle, and then like we have the very end, and
But here's
Go
the
Beyond is
thing.
an interesting concept. It's interesting conceptually, but
you say 92 is an S tier chapter. I'll go a step further. I'll say 103 is an S tier chapter. And the reason being,
let me think.
That's when Born This Way is introduced into the whole mix, and they finally get their first hit against this guy. And it's like everything you've been waiting for. You have an immovable object versus an unstoppable force. Diametrically opposed abilities. Wonder if you
that would be great if Born This Way actually did anything.
If it did anything in the next chapter,
immediately
it goes down to F.
All right, so and then we have Go Beyond, which Go Beyond is a fantastic concept. It's essentially like string theory in stand form, but it doesn't feel like it was naturally introduced into the story. Yes, we have the thing at the very end of the Urban Gorilla arc where Rai realizes, hey, this bubble is a rotating or vibrating line, and that's like, oh, okay, so like everything with Gappy's ability is related to the spin, but that doesn't explain why he has a separate type of bubble coming from his shoulder that he never noticed. You would notice that.
You would notice that. You would 100% notice that.
It's making holes everywhere.
That's why I say if we're going to average it, I think it does drop just a little below C, just across the board. Because I think the good chapters, they stand out. They're up on the top. But I think maybe it's out of 20 chapters, probably 8 that are maybe C and above, and 12 that are D through E. And I think that's sort of why I'm leaning towards D.
I guess I'll never know the reason why we're putting it the place we do.
That's the wonder.
The
wonder of you.
D for disappointing.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. We've been talking about the Wonder Review for 20 minutes. Let's get on to Radio
So it's
Gaga.
fitting. It's the same personally to the rest of JoJolion.
All right, let's get on to Radio Gaga and end this. All right.
Okay, Radio Gaga. All right, so I think the final chapter of JoJolion is wonderful. The ending as a whole is not great, but most of that's because of Wonder Review. I think Radio Gaga itself is really good.
I would not go S tier.
I would not go S tier. I think that it's
hovering
kind
somewhere
of
between
like,
here.
Yes, A or B.
A or B. So let's look over. I like Joseph. I like Herbert Purple finally has a physical form. That's great. Yep. That's cool. I love his whole interaction with Lucy. What it did with what the Wonder of You set up, it sort of did what it needed to do to be the part that it had to be, essentially, if that makes any sense.
I like how it essentially recontextualizes the Rock Humans as the alternate universe incarnation of the Pillarmen.
Yes.
Using Joseph.
Yes, absolutely. A little meandering towards what happened to Joseph because we sort of know he was in the family tree. We sort of know he's related down the line. So that's a little okay. I do really like Josuke's whole idea of how he views his mother, like his original mother, right? Josefumi's mother.
Oh yeah, Kiyomi. I have so many good things to say about how Kiyomi was handled at the very end. I know this is like a weirdly contentious subject because like a lot of people don't really agree for some reason. I think that like it's a very strong way of saying, hey, Kiyomi and Josefumi had a very like strained relationship with each other, but that doesn't mean she didn't care about him, and there was clearly a lot more going on there than what we were privy to, and I think that's great. So that's really strong. And the very end, the final chapter has some of the best panels in JoJolion. It's so beautiful.
No,
like
the art popped off at the end.
I think it belongs in A tier.
Just the arc by itself. Would you consider? A lot of people are saying it's Rolling Stones 2.0.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
It's like an epilogue flashback thing, but I don't think it serves the same narrative purpose as Rolling Stones.
Right, because Rolling Stones essentially said, okay, everyone was a slave to fate the entire time. This one doesn't do that, right? I mean, structured similarly as in like, okay, you have the thing at the the end of the part that's supposed to sort of epilogue and like take one of the main concepts and revamp it.
I think A is fair.
A is pretty fair.
I like it better than like Born This Way and Dubiwa and so on.
Right. I do like it. I think it's funny. I think it's a little sad. It's sad that JoJolion's ending. This is the series that we've all gotten invested in. I won't say my time was wasted. Not at all.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think that the issues with JoJolion's ending have anything to do with Radio Gaga. I think it's all to do with Wonder Review. And I think the way Radio Gaga wraps up in 2 chapters going off of Wonder Review is the best way it could have possibly done it. I do have some issues with, like, it feels like just kind of an excuse for fan service at times, like even more so than I think High Voltage did, to be honest.
With the clacker volleys, that was excessive.
Like, that was funny in that he just, like, throws them away, but it feels like a bit of time is wasted just on fan service.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, yeah, I think it's a very good mini arc.
Right.
Like, it does a lot in just 2 chapters.
Okay, wow. That's the entire JoJolion arc tier list.
The bottom half of the tier list is, like, it feels mostly empty, but I'm pretty sure that's, like, half of JoJolion considering Wonders of You there.
Right. So I put out a poll on my community tab, and it got like 20,000 votes. I said, like, where would you rank JoJolion? Top 3, mid part, or bottom 3 part? I think the vast majority of people ended up putting it somewhere, 64% out of 20,000 votes put it in mid-tier. I think that's fairly accurate. It's a mid-tier part for most people, and like you can see, the majority of the arcs line up around this part right here.
I mean, I've said it before. In my mind, JoJolion is like halfway point of the series, like midway between top and bottom 3.
Yeah.
But in my heart, it's my favorite part of JoJo.
That's okay. You've invested a lot of time into the series, so that's
I sure have.
That's totally understandable. Now, I do have a final question, though. Which cake did Josuke choose? The one with cherries, strawberries,
the
or
one with the
chocolate?
strawberries.
I also think it's the one
no
with the
question in my mind. One, because of the whole idea of the equivalent exchange and like how it's presented through Rai with the strawberries being sacrificed on his mountain, but also because it's kind of a neat callback to part 5 then, when the gang is all at the table and they're having the strawberry shortcake. And it
Yasuo is also
like,
called a strawberry at multiple points.
Yeah, strawberry chan.
I think it's definitely the strawberry cake.
It feels the most fitting, and also fruit parlor, you know.
Right. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, go subscribe to Aeon Star for JoJo and other stuff.
I am in the middle of working on my full JoJolion critique, so if you're interested in that,
oh, absolutely,
come on over.
I would love to see that when that comes out, 100%. Well, that was a lot of fun, and certainly much more work than I anticipated. Aeon Star's a really great guy. I wanted to thank him for taking the time to record this with me. Definitely go over and subscribe to his channel. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like the JoJo Stand tier list, I could share the .psd file if you guys want to make your own JoJolion arc tier lists. If you haven't already, make sure you check out some of my other videos on JoJo and some of the ones that aren't on JoJo, because I'm sure you're going to love them. Have a beautiful Duang, and I'll see you all next time.